Hey, John here with another episode of the Corona Files. We're up to episode 17. And if you're just tuning in for the first time, of course, the Corona Files series is a series of videos I'm doing during the coronavirus pandemic, where we're all locked down, stuck at home. And me and my team are using that time, of course, where we're a bit quieter on other business fronts to launch some new high-ticket dropshipping businesses. And I thought along the way, I'd love to just document how I go through this process. I've been doing this for 6 years now. I've also helped hundreds of other e-commerce dropshipping business owners through this process. And I wanted to put out not so much a course, if you like, but just the documentation of how I go about this so that other people who are getting started can follow along and get some tips and whatnot from somebody who's been doing it for a while. So where we're up to at this point is I'm still waiting for our websites to be completed by my team. We've had a few other projects on that have kind of got in the way, so that process has slowed down a little bit. So today I'm going to talk about calling suppliers, and that's the next thing that we're going to be doing and that I'm going to be doing is calling local suppliers to get approval to sell their products through our dropshipping business. And if you're new to high-ticket dropshipping, we're talking about calling the local suppliers here. That means, we work with suppliers within our country, within the market that we want to sell to. And so for me, the ones that I'm going to be demonstrating in this series are going to be based in Australia. I'm based in Australia, and the new businesses I'm setting up are based in Australia. If you're in the US, you'd be calling suppliers and manufacturers, distributors in the US, and so on. So a few episodes back, I did talk about, how you go out and find the suppliers that you want to sell on your site. So if you're wondering about that, go back, find that past episode. You can get access to all the recordings of this series down at the address if you're watching on video that you can see scrolling along the bottom of the screen. It's buildsellgrowrepeat.com/corona-files. So if you go in there, you can get free access to all of the previous recordings, videos of this episode, this series. And I will say for this particular episode, if you get onto that, I'm going to be putting in with the recordings some guides and resources to help you with calling suppliers. So my conversation guide, some stuff around dealing with objections, and a couple of other bits and pieces. So get access to that, and you'll be able to download those resources to help you with supply calls if that's something you've got going on. So I've got to say, over the years, I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of drop shippers, high-ticket drop shippers, and one of the biggest things that so many people get hung up on is calling suppliers, like getting on the phone, calling suppliers to seek their approval. And it's one of the biggest, most common roadblocks for people, and not just from the sense of getting the approval from suppliers when they call them, but just actually getting out there and making the calls. I've even met some drop shippers who had been doing it for years and had never picked up the phone and called a supplier before. And I get it. Like, it makes a lot of people nervous. There's obviously the chance of rejection, so suppliers may say no to you. And I think a lot of people are fearful that if I can't get enough approvals, then I won't have a business. And look, I get that, but I think it is something that we kind of, that concern is something that we kind of talk ourselves into, because in all of my experience, and everyone I've ever spoken to who's done this, who started out from a point of being very apprehensive, very nervous, anxious about doing it, when they actually got over that and did it, the end result, the experience of doing that, whether they got the approvals they wanted or not, the experience of doing it turned out to be a much more positive experience than they expected. So I think for me, doing this is a very important part of building one of these businesses. And I think actually making some calls, and I'll talk about do you need to call suppliers or not in a second, but actually making calls of this nature is a great thing for you to do as a business owner, right? This is about selling yourself and your business. And being able to sell is like if you're able to sell yourself, your business, physical products to another person on the phone, as well as in text or something like that, that's a skill that's one of the fundamental skills to being a successful business owner who, makes a decent amount of money, that the ability to sell. So that's why I like people to do this. Now, you could potentially outsource this if you can find the right person to do it. I don't recommend most people do that, particularly not if you're on your first store, but I do personally outsource it. We've got a lot of calls to get through. I don't have time to do them all myself. I've got a lot of other things to do, so I do outsource this. I work with somebody who's very good at doing supplier calls. They're probably better than me, I think. And so I let them do it. But, for the first many years of my business experience, I did it myself with high-ticket dropshipping. And in an upcoming episode, I am actually going to do a live supplier call on video so that you can watch me actually and hear me actually doing a supplier call. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So I think there's a few keys to having a good supplier call, and there's actually some things that you can do to put yourself in the right place before you even get started. So this is kind of, that is setting the right expectations for the process, setting the right mindset. And this is kind of where a lot of people actually trip themselves up. They go into the calls with the wrong mindset about what's going to happen and what they should get out of it. And then having the right conversation, obviously. Now, before I dive into breaking those things down, a lot of people will ask, do I need to call them? Do I need to get on the phone and call people in the first place? And while I think it's a good thing to do and it's a great thing to do and it does improve your chances, there are some circumstances where you might not do it. Now, you can absolutely get suppliers via email or forms on their website. There's no denying that, right? There's some people who have started high-ticket dropshipping businesses who have never called a supplier on the phone to get their approval before. So you definitely can do that. And in fact, some suppliers will require you to do that, right? So if you go to a supplier's website and you look in, say, the footer of the site, and you see that in the footer they have a link that says resellers or, or retailers or something like that. And you click on that link and you go to a page and it says, you need to fill in this form. Please fill in this form first. There's the form on the page. It asks you a bunch of questions, your business name, your company name, contact details, what you want to sell, all that sort of stuff. Now, if you see that on a supplier's website, yes, you need to do that. That's your first step. You should do that first because they're essentially saying, this is what we want you to do. And it makes sense if they're showing a preference for what they want to do and you want to start that relationship off on the right foot, that you should do what they ask you to do. Because if you call them, generally all they're going to say is, yeah, great, you need to fill in this form and we'll get back to you, right? So fill in the form. Now, I will fill in that form and then I will wait probably a day, no more than 2 days. If I don't hear back from them, I will then make a follow-up call if there is a phone number available on the website. And that follow-up call will just be very simple. It will just be, hi, it's John. I'm calling from this company. I submitted your online form a couple of days ago. I just want to follow up on that and make sure you received it. And they'll say, oh, yeah, we got it, and yeah, it's all good. You're good to go. Or they might just say, oh, look, yeah, we've got it, but we haven't looked at it yet. We'll get back to you in a few days. That's the end of the conversation. So, yep, fantastic. No worries. I look forward to hearing about that. And then if you don't hear back in a few days, call them again. Just following up on this. So if the form's there, do it. And you should always look around the supplier's site to make sure that those forms do or don't exist. Usually you'll find links to them in the footer of their site, but sometimes it will be in the main navigation or something like that. And often those sites won't have a phone number for you to call or any other contact means, and that's fine. Now, if they don't have that, the other thing, you're then either going to find on their website an email address, a phone number, or like a contact form, right? As you would expect on most websites. So you've got a choice at that point to say, well, I'm going to send them I'm going to send them something via email or via the form, or I'm going to call them. So my preference and what I've always done is to call first, okay? Now, you could do it the other way around, I think. It's not my preference, but you could email and wait a short period of time and follow that email up with a phone call, right? So you could email them and basically put the same thing that you would put in the phone conversation into an email, right? And I'll talk about what that conversation, like it's actually quite basic, but that would be okay. That wouldn't be a massive problem. So you can do that, but I don't think you should rely just on email. The reason for that is that, one, not everybody's going to open your email in the first place. You know, some people are not going to see the email. They're not going to read the email. They might see the email when they're really busy, and they're just going to buzz right past it and then forget to come back to it. Some people will approve you that way, and that's totally cool. But there are going to be suppliers that are not going to do that, right? Me personally, honestly, you know, if I was a supplier and somebody contacted me via email, I'm going to send them an email back saying, yeah, great, give us a call, right? You know, I want to talk to you. I want to see what you're about. I want to gauge who you are. And they can't do that via email, right? You could just be some dude sitting in his bedroom in his pajamas who's woken up with a bright idea this morning. And that's not somebody that a lot of suppliers want to do business with. So for me, the reason I like to have the calls made first is because I want to start a rock solid relationship with my suppliers, right? And I want to show them the respect that I'm actually going to pick up the phone and have a chat with them. I'm going to start to get to know them, or at least somebody from my team is going to start to get to know them and start that relationship off on the front foot. And I think a lot of suppliers actually appreciate having a phone call and talking to them. And that's particularly the case, I find, in countries like Australia, where this sort of stuff is a bit newer, the drop shipping stuff. It definitely hurts to have those calls. Now, so I like to make those. I think it's good to build that relationship from the start, get it off on the best possible foot. I tend to get more approvals if I try and make all the calls. As I say, not everybody responds to email and not everybody will approve you via email. So it's making the calls and sending the emails. So while the calls, you know, it feels it's much more confronting. There's, you know, you can think in your head there's more chance of rejection. There's not really any difference to the chance of rejection. I think what people feel nervous about it is that they don't want to be rejected in person. And look, that's okay. So with that, how do you make the calls go well? Well, I think the first thing to start, like, you need to get yourself in the right. If you're somebody who feels nervous, you don't think you're good on the phone, or whatever it might be, you need to set your expectations. That's the first step. And so the reality is you need to accept in your mind that not everybody's going to say yes, right? And that's 100. Not everybody says yes to me, and I've literally done hundreds of supplier calls over the last 6 years. Not everybody says yes to me. That's fine. I'm completely comfortable with that. You have to remember, when somebody says no to you in this instance, it's not personal. It's not about you. This is business. Business is not a personal thing. So when somebody says no to you in this case, they're not saying, no, you're a terrible person, you're an idiot, I don't want to work with you personally. They're just saying that at that point, they're not prepared to say yes to your business. And there may be a number of reasons for that, which you do need to work out. And I'll come back to handling those objections. But set in your mind that some people are going to say no, and that's okay, right? You're starting a relationship here. And while a lot of people will say yes to you on the first call, which is fantastic, some people aren't, often just because they're a bit more cautious, right? And if you think about it, like, you know, you go on a date with someone, right? Now, or you ask somebody out on a date or something like that, some people are just not going to say yes to you straight away because they're more cautious. They want to get to know you a bit better. While some people will say yes if they're really into it from the word go, and they really know what they're looking for, what they want, and they see that in your business from the start. So it's okay to know, and it's okay to accept that getting some approvals is going to take multiple contacts, right? Multiple calls, a few emails, and a few conversations. That's actually not unusual, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, for the best suppliers out there, often that's the case. Often they will not say yes on the first go, and I'll tell you this because I've been told by suppliers. Some suppliers actually want you to have a second and a third go because that's a measure of how serious you are, right? If you call somebody once, they say no, and you give up, that says to me that you're not really committed to your business, right? And there's a long history of in sales about how many calls it takes to get the most sales across the line. And most sales in traditional sales are not made on the first call. They're made on the follow-up. And so the highest selling ever salespeople will tell you that one of the secrets to their success was how much follow-up they were prepared to do, because that's where they made a lot of their best sales. A lot of their biggest sales was on the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth call or contact with their prospect. And so this is no different to that, right? As I said, you're selling your business, you're selling yourself, so you need to be prepared to make more than one call. So expect that. Expect that some people are not going to say yes, and that you're prepared and you're willing to make a second call, maybe a week later, maybe a month later. Maybe it takes you 3 months to get some suppliers on board. That's okay. That's fine. There's no rush. There's no artificial race happening here. Your business doesn't need to be up and running in 1 week, right? And if it does, because you need the money or something, well, you're in for a rude shock, right? That's not how it works. And these businesses are not going to throw you a financial lifeline in the short term. Now, so those are the main expectations, I think. Now, in terms of the mindset, so a lot of people get stuck on this thing about, well, you know, I kind of feel like I'm asking for a favor for the supplier. I kind of don't want to feel like I'm begging, like, oh, please approve me to sell your products. And if you don't, I'm really going to struggle to have a business. And a lot of people particularly people who are doing this for the first time, come to this supplier calls thing from the mindset that I'm at a disadvantage. I'm at a lower level of power than the manufacturer, the supplier that I'm seeking approval from. And so they start off with that mindset, and they don't have a very strong conversation because they doubt themselves and they doubt what they're asking for in the first place. And anytime you do something and you think you're in a lower position, or you don't think you're going to be successful, often you won't be, right? Your thoughts and what you tell yourself, your internal story, has a lot of power to how successful your actions are. So, and it's no different for calling suppliers. What you need to think, and the mindset I take to it, is that when I'm talking to a supplier, I'm coming to them with a mutually beneficial business proposition, right? And a mutually beneficial relationship. Yes, I'm asking them to give me access to presumably their great products that I am going to make money with, but inherent in that is that they are going to make more money. So I'm actually going to these people with an exciting opportunity for them to make a lot more money in their business than they're already making, because I am going to sell a lot of their products. If I didn't believe that I was going to sell their products, why the hell am I going into business, right? So that's the mindset I go in with. We're on equal footing. I'm giving them an exciting opportunity. And I've got to tell you, that's what a lot of suppliers think. They don't think, they're not looking at this from the perspective of, oh God, not another, person who wants to try and flog my products, oh, this is terrible for me. It's there's such a downside to this for me. That's not what a lot of them are thinking. Now, some have had bad experiences in the past, and I'll come to that when we talk about expectations, but that's not where a lot of them are starting from. A lot of them are looking for opportunities to grow their business. They're business owners too, just like you. So what is their interest? Their interest is to sell more products, to find more opportunities to sell their products, to get their products ahead of their competitor products in their market and get more domination of their market. That's what they want. And you're coming to them with the ability to help them do that. You're providing them an avenue to do that. And because you're going to be showing them a website that looks fantastic, that you've already built out, they can look at it and go, oh, wow, this thing looks great. Right? I can see that this person's, got at least the potential to sell some products. Your chances are much better. And I think if you go into the calls with that mindset, then just the way you approach it, the way you talk, the way you interact with the supplier will be much more positive, right? And they'll feel that. They'll sense that. They'll sense that sense of excitement, whatnot in your voice, and that will in turn rub off on them, and they'll feel more excited about the prospect. So that's the mindset. Now, having the right conversation. There's a few tips to having a conversation that I'll just go through real quick. Ultimately, the conversation is a very, very simple one, right? And I'm going to share. If you go to the address you see scrolling along the bottom of the screen, if you're listening on audio, it's buildsellgrowrepeat.com/corona-files. You can actually download my conversation guide with handling objection stuff and some tips and pointers in it. It's a very simple conversation. You don't say more than you need to say. Primarily what you're actually trying to do is get them talking and you listening, right? Once again, one of the secrets to any effective communication is to listen more than you talk, and actually respond to what you're hearing. So having a simple conversation, listening, and getting to the heart of any objections that I've put your way, right? This is super important. So some people are just going to say yes with no objections, right? They're just going to get straight to the yes. Fantastic. That's awesome. But a lot of people are, if they say no, there is a reason why they're saying no. And for a lot of people making these calls the first time, particularly, the minute they're told no, they just stop and they're like, oh, okay. Oh, no worries. I'll talk to you later. And they'll hang up the phone at that point. The air gets knocked out of them and they feel a bit deflated, and they give up at that point on the call. And that's not really the right thing to do, right? What you need to do when that happens is you need to accept that person said no. That's not the end of the story though, right? You need to then find out why that person said no, right? You need to dig a little bit deeper, respectfully, into why they've said no. So what sits behind the no, right? Because for some suppliers, you might just call them at a time where they're really busy, right? They're having a bad day. They're feeling sick. They're angry because they had a fight with their wife or their husband earlier that day, or their kids are being shitbags. I don't know, whatever it might be. They might just not be in the right place. And for a lot of people, saying no is actually easier than saying yes, right? Particularly when they're in a situation where they're feeling under pressure, they're stressed. Saying no is very easy because no just makes you go away. They don't even have to think about it at a time when they don't want to think about it. But they may not actually have a genuine ongoing reason why they need to say no to you. Or their reason for saying no may actually be something that you can talk to them further about, that you can turn around, you can address. And I've heard so many stories from people. I've been through it myself. So there's a few common objections that you get when you're talking to suppliers, right? And some you can move through on the call. Some you can't move through. So there are some things that you can't immediately deal with there. And so that is, once you understand that, you respond to it, that can be the end of the call. But often it means that you're going to call them back in the future. I'll go about what that is. Some common objections. A big one that will come up, and I've experienced this one a lot in Australia actually, but it can come up in any country around the world, is around, oh yeah, look, we tried working with dropshippers, but we had a bad experience, and so we don't do it anymore. We're not accepting dropshippers anymore. Now, if somebody just said no to me, I said, oh, look, we want to work with you, and they say no, and I'll go, oh, okay, look, no worries. Why is that? what's the barrier for you here? And they'll say, oh, look, yep, we worked with dropshippers in the past. We had and it was just a bad experience. And I'll say, oh, okay, so once again, I'm not just going to accept that at face value. I'm going to say, okay, oh, geez, that sounds terrible. Can you tell me what happened there? I'm really curious. And I'll say, oh, well, we approved them and we got them all the products and prices and our preferred pricing and all of that. And they just went out and undercut all our pricing. They sold everything really cheap. And, and then all of our other retailers were complaining about it. And we had to deal with all of these angry other retailers, and it just wasn't really good. They didn't respect our brand, right? And so that's awesome, right there, bang. You've got right to the heart of what their problem is, and that's something that you can address. So I'll say, and when somebody gives you a reason for an objection, what you need to do, don't dismiss it. Never ever dismiss it. Never argue with it. Right? These are the big no-nos in a supply call. Never get into an argument. Never, ever, ever get into an argument. You cannot win. You cannot change somebody's mind by arguing with them. It's the hardest way to actually change somebody's perception and somebody's mind, right? So you never argue and you never disagree, right? It's not going to help you, right? So the way that you don't do these things is to, when they tell you something, even if you think they're wrong in what they're saying, you need to accept it, and you need to say that I accept that, or that I recognize that you've said that, and then go into an alternative narrative for them to consider. So on the objection that I've just listed, I will say, oh, look, man, that's really terrible. I really hate it when people do that. I really hate it when retailers do that, because it makes it so hard for people like me who want to do a great job and want to do the right thing. And look, I can tell you now that when you work with us, this is what we're going to do. And then I'll list off, in that example that I gave, I will say, we absolutely will stick to your recommended pricing if that's your approach to pricing. We take care of your brand online. You can see how we present things on our website. We're very professional. We recognize the value in your brand. We're going to do a great job of representing that to our market, and da-da-da-da-da. And so you present them with an alternate narrative. Now, they may not still say yes just because you said that right then and there, right? Now, if somebody's got a strong objection and it's based in an actual experience, you may need to demonstrate to them over a little bit of time that you are not the same as that bad experience that they have, right? So I will put my case to them in response to that objection about why I'm different, why my business is different. But I understand that may not still convince them right then and there. I may need to call them a couple more times to touch base, tell them my business is going fantastic. I'm working with other suppliers who are really happy. I can give them contacts at some of those suppliers so that they can call those suppliers and see, have we been a trustworthy retailer? And I'm going to get them at some point down the track. So that's a common objection. Another one that may come up is, oh, look, we don't work with drop shippers. We don't do drop shipping. And once again, that's a similar objection, but this is also one of the other most common ones. And once again, you need to dig down into why that is. So somebody says it to you, your response is, oh, okay, look, no worries, thanks for letting me know. Do you mind if I ask why you don't like working with drop shippers? Now, that's not, some people will feel that's a bit confrontational, but it's really not, right? You're just having a conversation. You're seeking to understand that person. And if you say it in a nice level tone of voice, you're being respectful. You say, please, can I please ask why that is? And they'll generally tell you why it is. They will generally have some reason why that is. And actually, there are all sorts of different reasons. So I won't deal with every one of those. It may be that, they, as I said, they had a bad experience in the past. It may be that they may say, and this is a common one, they'll say, look, we only like to do bulk orders. It's for our warehouse. We only like doing bulk shipping orders. We don't like doing individual product orders because it creates too much work for us, too much admin time. And so once again, if you hear that, recognize it. Say, yeah, look, you're right. I can see that. There is more individual orders to process, particularly if, as we plan, we do a really high volume of sales on your products. But I think there's some solutions we could offer to that. So, and then offer them some solutions. So, to that particular one, I would say, look, well, something we can do to help is we'll organize the shipping on your products, right? So we'll book all the shipping for you. All you've got to do is stick the labels on the boxes and put them out to be picked up, and we'll take that admin burden off your office. Or you could say, okay, well, looking at your margins, and this may not work, may or may not work, you could say, I think we could pay a little bit extra on each order to cover the admin cost or the warehouse cost for your staff to do this extra work for us. We're happy to do that. Let's whack $15 onto every order. Right? I mean, if you're selling high ticket products, if you're selling a $2,000 product, paying an extra $10 to $15 is not going to break your bank, right? And if it gets you on board with them, and you're getting on board with them by helping them, your relationship is off to a good start. And down the track, if that relationship continues successfully, trust me, they're going to help you out in return. Down the track, once you've sold a bunch of their products, you can ask for a better rate on the sales, a better margin, and you're going to make up, you're going to cover off that extra, often called a drop shipping fee or whatever, to do it, right? So those are just two scenarios. But what I'm not going to do, if somebody says to me, oh yeah, we only like to do bulk orders, we don't like to do the individual orders because it creates more time for us. Now, whether that's genuine or not, I'm not going to call them out on that, right? And this is key. I'm not going to go, no, it doesn't. It doesn't create that much work. Come on, man. I mean, it's just a few orders here or there. That's the wrong thing to do. Never, ever, ever do that, right? So you won't get approvals. But really, the success, having the most success with getting suppliers approved, and particularly getting approved with suppliers that other dropshipping competitors don't get approved with, because a lot of dropshippers, honestly, are lazy, right? They're really lazy, and they won't go to the effort of getting the hard to get supplies. A lot of dropshippers won't even make these phone calls, right? So if you're somebody that will really go out and beat down the door to these suppliers, and you get some on board that a lot of other dropshippers can't, then from a competitive perspective in your niche, you're going to be significantly more successful and better placed to grow a big business. And really, getting the most suppliers on board comes down to how well you're able to deal with their objections, and being prepared to do that over time. So that's handling objections. I think a couple of other things that I think it's really important to do and to make clear. Have a natural conversation. So a lot of people will give you a conversation guide. I'm giving you a conversation guide. If you're watching the video, you can see the address scrolling along the bottom of the screen. If you're listening on audio, it's in the show notes. But it's a guide, right? So you need to come up with the conversation in your own words. You want to be able to speak confidently and naturally in your own language, in the way that you speak. So don't read off somebody else's template. You're going to sound like a robot, and you're not going to feel as confident. Try writing your conversation out and how you're going to handle objections ahead of time, and write it by hand on a piece of paper, right? So this is an old public speaking trick. I used to do a lot of public speaking in another life, on stage in front of, hundreds, even I've done it a couple of times in front of thousands of people. And when you're speaking, obviously, when you're public speaking, you don't want to stand there reading off the piece of paper. You want to be able to give your speech naturally, and you may have one of those stupid things that runs the text in front of you like you do on TV, but I don't like doing that either. So you want to be able to recall as much of what you're going to say without having to refer to notes, right? And you want it to flow naturally. And the way that when you write something by hand, it forms connections within your brain, neural connections that typing or other forms of recording things don't, right? And so when you go to giving that speech, having that conversation, if you wrote it out by hand, before, you'll recall it more easily in your brain, and it will actually flow a lot easier. Even if you have to refer back to your notes a little bit, it will still happen. It will feel much more natural. So that's a little public speaking trick that works for this. Don't pretend to be something that you aren't. So this is probably a little bit contentious for some people. Some people make these calls and pretend their business has been in operation for years. They're already approved with some suppliers, and they're really just lying about that. I don't think that's necessary, right? I don't think suppliers need. Some suppliers will be like, come back to us when you've got a bit more experience in the niche, and that's okay. But most suppliers don't need you to have been in business for years. I think that's a bit of a false assumption. What they want to know is that you're trustworthy, that you can run a professional online business, and you're demonstrating that by the website that you've built. So I'm always quite clear, if they ask, this is a new business, right? This is a new business. We're getting started now. And we'll go from there. The reason it's not a problem as well is that, and this ties into the next point, you're not seeking any credit terms here. So if you're not, so a lot of suppliers automatically think when somebody calls them up for a retail arrangement that, oh, this person's looking for like a wholesale credit account, which is basically you're going to place bulk order. This is what retail stores do, physical retail stores. They place a bulk order for products. They get it on a 30-day account or a 60-day account or a 15-day account. And they don't pay for it until later in that accounting cycle. So there's a credit relationship there, and there's a higher bar to getting a credit relationship. They want to do background checks. They want trade references. They want all that sort of stuff. Well, for dropshipping, we're not seeking a credit arrangement. We're paying for everything before it even leaves their warehouse. So the risk for the supplier is incredibly small. Yes, there's a risk that you're going to be representing their brand online, and they're going to be having their mind that, oh, is this person going to trash my brand? Which for big companies, the goodwill in their brand alone may be worth millions of dollars. But, you're not seeking credit terms. So they don't need to know so much about your business history, because if you don't pay for your products, then they just don't get shipped. And there's no skin off the supplier's nose. So don't pretend to be something you aren't. I think, so if you pretend that you've been in business, that your website's already operational, like there's too many opportunities for you to get caught out on that. So if the supplier says to you, oh, great, what brands are you selling? What are you going to say? Oh, this brand and that brand. You can tell them some other brands. They're going to go, oh, great, I know such and such over at that other brand. I'll give them a call. Right? And so right there, and this has happened. I've heard of this happening. You're caught out on a lie right there, and that's basically you screwed with that supplier forever, right? So it's just normal human stuff. Don't lie. Don't be dishonest in any aspect of your life, let alone in your business, because every liar gets caught out sooner or later. It doesn't matter when, but sooner or later, if you get a bad name, bad reputation in the industry you want to go into from the start, then you might as well not bother. So don't pretend, just be open, be honest. Your business will still go along fine. And always remember to make clear to them you're not seeking credit terms. And that's always a part of my conversation. Even if I don't need to say it to them because they understand what I'm doing, I'll still say it just to make sure it's clear with them, and that's all good. But that's really it. So I've talked a lot about this, and I've said a lot of different things, but I think the final key point is to say, don't overthink this. It's actually a lot simpler than you might feel it is right now, particularly if you haven't done this before and you're thinking of doing this for the first time. It is much simpler. I personally coached hundreds of high-ticket dropshipping entrepreneurs, and for most of those at some point, we've spoken through getting supplier approval and that sort of thing. And almost, I'd say 95% or more people who have actually done it have said to me afterwards, that went a lot better than I was expecting it to do. I did so much better on those phone calls than I thought I would. The response from suppliers was much more positive than I was expecting, right? And so don't overthink it. It's a really simple conversation. It's a very simple process. And if you get out and make the calls, your chances of building a bigger, stronger business that is more likely to find the success you're looking for is significantly enhanced if you make the calls in addition to sending emails seeking approval. So that's it for today. If you want to get the resources to go along with this episode, as I mentioned, go to buildsellgrowrepeat.com/corona-files, and you can get some attachments and resources to go along with this episode. Thanks for checking it out, and I'll be back very soon with the next episode of the Corona Files. See y'all.